let's talk about this just for a second. This might be just like a segment thing. Um, how do you handle? Because I've had it too, and I've had like a little shift that's had to happen in my mind and my heart. Um, how do you deal with challenging people in your life? Right, like the thing that I used to do, and I think that this came up for me even this week. This came up for me where I had this moment of going. I realized that my first instinct is I want to run. Like I want to run. Like I just want to go, yep, no, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this situation. I just want to be gone. That's my first instinct. And I feel like God's been working on me to go, I know that you feel like that, but that's not what I've created you to be. I've created you to be like, let's stay here in this moment. And I love the term anti-fragile. I love that term. I love the idea of being met with adversity, and it's not something that breaks us, but it's something that is thrown at us. And when we're hit with it, we don't get you get stronger as a result of it. You get stronger as a result of the adversity, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not to have like a combative mindset with it, right? It's not about like, right. But I I feel as if these are these moments of patience that God has allowed in my life. Not assigned, but allowed, right? Where it's like these people come in and it does feel, hey, there is something that I need you to learn and to grow from this and to apply.
Right.
Because we're gonna have, because guess what? We got Satan's out there anyway that hates us and wants to kill us regardless, right? So I'm not saying that these challenging people that we have in our life are Satan,
No, no.
though they might feel like that. Um, but you know, how do you deal with this, Doug? How do you deal with your adversity?
I look for common ground to start with because usually there's a disagreement in approach or disagreement in tactic or how we're dealing with certain things. So I try to take it back to even before all the discussions of work and whatever else is going on, try to find some sort of common ground and then build a relationship from there because again, it's all about relationships in the end. And I'm going to be held accountable for how I dealt with every relationship that was handed to me.
Yeah.
And I need to be able to find common ground. And I need to be able to speak up for myself and be an advocate for when I feel I'm being treated unfairly or when I feel that the level of adversity coming at me is not correct. It's not what is required. And it may be that person's normal way of responding because of their past. And so then it's a matter of starting to talk through it and like, okay, when you say this, here's how I respond. We we have talked before, like he's a numbers guy, I'm a words guy. And there are things that I need to do for the short term just to make him happy.
Mm.
And I can do that.
Yeah.
I may not like it, but I can do it.
Yeah.
Not in my nature, and it's hard for me. It's a struggle, especially with chemo brain on the horizon, where it's like the nerve damage is not just limited to my hands; it's going to be everywhere. I'm like, okay, my brain's not functioning on all cylinders at the moment.
Right.
What do I need to do? Which usually means sticky notes everywhere, which my desk is a mess of sticky notes. Good thing the camera's not pointed down because it's
Well,
not a
what
mess.
you'd probably consider a mess, Doug, would be probably much different than what I'd consider a mess. But
No, it's yeah, it's a little crazy because writing it down is part of the process for me,
yes, right, yes, yes, yes.
and that helps me to. And then when I can take a sticky note and check the box off and throw it away, I feel like I've
Mm,
accomplished something. But I also recognize my limitation. I like to start something, get it going, and move on to something new. I don't like doing repetitive work. And a lot of the work that I'm assigned right now is repetitive in nature, and it's not ticking my boxes on a personal level.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
part of it's recognition of my own shortcomings and where I know I need to just buckle down and like with First Corinthians, sometimes it's better to be wronged. It's not always about me getting my way.
Right.
Sometimes it's about preserving the relationship for the greater good, which is hard.
No, I think it's that, right? I think that I run so many times into those issues of I'm getting better, but I just want people to see things or understand things the way that I'm processing them,
Right.
thinking about them. And it's super frustrating though. And I'll have to say the flip side of that. I'll have to say the flip because I've also had the flip side where somebody's like, um, oh yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. I get it. Yes, absolutely. I get it. And then they don't have it. Like
Yeah.
they don't have it, or they didn't even remotely do anything close to what, I asked them or requested of them. That's always a little frustrating too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And some of it's knowing yourself. The older I get, the more I know myself, the more sin areas I see in myself. But it just, conversations with how we process things and how we deal with things. And like, I know I need time to myself in order to process. And when I don't get that, then I just start to break down inside. I had roommates one time. It was my birthday. They're like, "What do you want?" I had four roommates. I'm like, "Go away for the day. What are you
Yeah.
going to do?" I don't know that I'm going to do anything,
Yeah.
but I might do something. But I want the freedom to be able to just be in the house to myself and process because there was always someone home, and it was my house that they were renting from, and it drove me crazy that one of them just didn't had money from his parents' inheritance
Yeah.
when they passed, and he didn't at the time wasn't working,
Yeah.
taking like one class at college a semester. I'm like, this is you gotta go do something. Get out of my hair.
I had a lot of that. I think you bring up a really interesting point, which is number one, writing. We'll come back to that because that obviously ties in with the journal and everything that we've been working on. But sometimes we have to find those little moments to go, okay, I'm in a scenario where I can't do it the way that I want to do it. Is there an improvised way that I can find that relief for me? I had a
Yeah.
scenario this last week where, I had a couple of those moments pop up for me where I just wanted to say, yeah, I don't want to be here. I want to run. I want to go. And just go, yeah, you can't do that though. You're in a professional setting and you have to hang tight. And number one, like stuff that we were just talking about, I think last week, but this idea of going, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Just like a moment of just like number one, inviting God into it. And then for me, for example, that might be sometimes I have a little blank notebook, or I have a notebook that I use for business, but I will also like jot some personal thoughts I have. And sometimes I will jot down a few of my frustrations that I'm having in the moment, because that's a way of kind of like going, let me not just keep it in here stewing. Let me just write some of it down just so that it's down, right? And just kind of out, and at least kind of sort of capture my thoughts and start to frame them. But it can be a practice. I mean, it can be hard. It can be hard where all of a sudden you find yourself consistently like looking at the clock, like kind of going, is day over, right? Or
Yeah.
how much longer of this do I have to go? Oh my gosh, only 10 minutes have gone by. you know, but moments where you just have to breathe and just go, this is what I'm finding myself more and more trying to get into a neutral position with neutral, taking a breath and just being present in my body and just going, again, this is just a moment. This is just what this is. Yes, I might be feeling discomfort, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to be feeling it forever. Continual thing that I talk about with people in recovery, because especially when you're in the moment of pain, it just feels like it's never going to end. Like it just slows time down.
Yeah.
And to realize, no, that's not the case. I'm just in a moment. It feels like it's taking forever, but a second is a second, a minute is a minute, and it's how you're perceiving this right now. And one of the best ways to perceive it is to just take a breath and to just go, these are just feelings you're having.
Right.
It'll
You
be
know,
okay.
my church, Bible church back in Columbus, they used to do this before baptisms, where they would, whoever's being baptized got a chance to write down whatever they felt that they needed to confess or were dealing with or struggling with. And we actually had a cross that they would go up and nail it to
Oh,
right
yeah.
before they were baptized. I'm like, that's not a bad practice. Writing something down, going into the backyard, nailing it to the cross, making sure my neighbors don't go see everything I got written. But it's just
I'm,
that physical act of nailing it to the cross and reminding myself that I'm the one who nailed Jesus to the cross.
yeah.
So powerful.
That's very, very good. I had somebody else that also gave me a hint, which I've done a few times, which is things that I am concerned about or that I'm really worried about, to write them out and to put them into a closed envelope, to date it a year from now, and to say, um, for God's cares and concerns, right? To like literally
Mm,
go, this isn't mine, Lord, I'm giving this to you, right? Like I can't do this. Here's the thing that I'm worried about, and I'm releasing it and I'm giving it to you for your care and control and to seal it. And I've done it a couple of times with some stuff where I've like found an envelope like about a year later that's been dated a year later, and you pull out the thing and just go, holy crap, like I'm not worried about this or that anymore.
right.
It's really it was a neat practice to do. But there's something in that, like what those worries and concerns are, to like write it down and to say, Lord, it's you, or to nail it to a cross, or just say, you died for this already. I
Exactly.
you know I'm trying to control it. I think that that's probably, for me, it's probably it's one of my character defects I have to fight continuously. I want control. I want to be God. I want life. I want life and people and work and career. I want to go the way that I want it to go. I know better. And if only everybody else did stuff the way that I want them to do, then the world would be a perfect place. But it wouldn't.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be. I'd be a terrible dictator, right?
Yeah. Let me ask your wife if that would be the case. Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm reading the author and podcaster Michael Malice. I'm reading his book called The White Pill, and The White Pill kind of does an overview about um, communism and the creation of Soviet Russia. And I've just finished a section that talks about like Stalin and everything that was going on, and just this idea and just the madness of having one man that's at a top. Like, when Stalin was at the end of his life, he lasted until he was like 70. This is a guy he was a monster with the stuff that he did. But he was so he drank and he smoked and he did all this stuff. And as his health started to deteriorate, he started believing that doctors were conspiring to kill him, even though they were trying to give him, hey, you need to rest. And they're trying to get me to rest because they want me out of power and they want to do all this stuff. in the very last couple of days in his life, he'd had a stroke. And when they tried to get the best doctors that they could to help him, all of the doctors that they needed to help give him the best care were all in prison under him. Like they
Surprise,
had
surprise.
they had to go to the doctors in prison and ask, like, we sort of have an important leader that might be going through something. If they had these symptoms, what would you do? And anyway, that was just a thing that came to my mind about, like, the madness of, and that's, and honestly, that's the nature of human corruption, which is a good reminder for me, is to go, no matter how well I think that the world would run, it would become monstrous, right? It's Sauron in the One Ring, right?
Yes.
As much as I want to, Kate and I were watching that the other day, and as much as I want to be like an Aragorn, or as much as I hope to someday be a Gandalf, or someday, someday I might feel like a Frodo. I'll tell you, I think that there's many days I'm more like a Boromir. I'm more like a guy that just is like, well, if we just had this ring, could you imagine what we could do with it?
Yeah.
And I think that there's that tendency in the human heart of like, yeah, but we could use this for good,
Right.
and that's a big, I strive to be an Aragorn, but I think, the world and flesh side of me has also got some Boromir in him too, that gets tempted. Even in that story, Frodo, who's gone all the way, even he can't throw the ring in the very end. Like,
Yeah.
even he gets turned, and he's a guy that's gone all the way to the end. It's not until we have Gollum come in and do his happy accident of stealing. But do you think we've put in enough nerd stuff? Have I put in enough communism? Have I put in enough communism and nerd stuff?
You can always add a little bit more nerd stuff. It's always good with me.
You gotta always add more stuff. Hey, real quick, just an update for our for people listening. So you got scans, right? So you got scans, and you got some news, which is, positive-ish.
Positive-ish. That's the way I look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, positive-ish, right? There you go.
Yeah. The parts of my lungs they were worried about have all mostly all cleared up.
Great.
Um, and the duodenum cancer, or duodenum, as my doctor calls it,
Yeah.
has not progressed. So
Great.
it's status quo, and on with more chemo treatments. And they're going to actually lessen the oxaliplatin, which is the one that causes nerve damage.
Okay, great.
They said actually it works best in the early stages anyway.
Yeah.
And so they may reduce it down to nothing anyway, which is good.
Good.
He's afraid I'll get, because nerve damage may resolve itself or it may not. So I'm already got some of that. I don't want to anymore. And hopefully it'll start reversing itself once I'm off of it completely. So that's good. So I'm going to stay the course with where I'm at, and we'll see what's next.
All right, man. Hey, that's something. That's
Yeah.
some goodish, positive-ish news.
And my numbers keep dropping. So
That's great. What were your last numbers at?
138.
Okay.
To something the time before. It came down from, it was 4,000 in
Oh,
December.
right. Totally.
38 is the 0 to 38 is the norm.
Yeah, and what was your last reading again?
138.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
But it was 1,000 in January, went down to 810 pretty quickly.
Yeah. Good.
So yeah,
We'll just keep praying.
it's still in the back of my mind that it's not curable, but they only know it's not curable because no one's been cured of it before.
Yeah. Hey, listen,
I could be the first.
right. I mean, that's it. I mean, again, I give you again, it's an anecdotal story, right? Anecdotal story that I'd heard years ago about a guy who'd been given just like all the sign-offs, where they just went, that's it, man. Like, there's nothing else we can do for you. And this guy kind of went back to his home, and his visualization that he had was he just had this visualization of almost like God's army. Like he almost envisioned like God's army and horses and spearmen and all this stuff. And he just kept envisioning this battle that was going on. And he said that's all he just kept doing. Like he
Hmm.
just kind of went back, and then that was just sort of his vision that he had of just like, you know what? God's army is actually at work here. And he had these images of like this battle raging, and, you know, God and his army being victorious. And I guess he had gone in for just a checkup thing. And, you know, again, anecdotally, but like doctors couldn't figure it out. Like cancer was gone. And there was like there was no explanation. And he said, yeah, well, this is what I've been doing. So that's all I can say.
Yeah,
So, you know, again, anecdotal, and I get it. Like everybody's in their different place, and you never know. But you know, again, God's bigger. Like we've talked about before, God's bigger than your cancer, regardless.
exactly.
Right?
Amen.
God's bigger than your cancer. God's bigger than any of our other junk, and God's bigger than our plans that we have. Right? We got all these plans for what we want to do. Let's just touch on this just briefly, right? Because you just sort of talked about it for a second. Actually, I'd just like to talk about this just for a second, because we're just talking about writing. And we're going to be going into this deeper, I think, over the next few weeks when you guys join us. But I will say that one of the things that we have in our, and if you don't know about it, you just go to I'd rather be a buffalo.com/free journal, or just go to the main page, I'd rather be a buffalo.com. We have a 1 month Buffalo journal that we're giving out a free PDF that you can get a free download, or if you want a Kindle version of it or a hard copy version of it, you can head on over to Amazon and find it. But you were talking about, we were both just talking about like the benefits of writing, which we actually cover in the book right here. And I think that I just wanted to touch on just a couple of those things and maybe expand on it just for a second, especially when it's about writing, right? We talked about this specifically, which is, and let me talk about these two things. Journaling can have many benefits for individuals who practice it regularly. I'm going to point out two of the benefits here, not in order, but one of them is reduce stress, right? Writing about your thoughts and feelings can help you process and work through difficult emotions, reducing stress and anxiety. And then the other one that we talked about here, which is number 3 on the list we're looking about, is increased self-awareness. By reflecting on your own experiences and thoughts, you can develop a deeper sense of self-awareness, which can help you make better decisions and understand your own strengths and weaknesses. It's interesting to me over time, especially as I've been writing and doing journaling stuff, because I've been doing journaling. Doug, how long have you been doing journaling for?
Um, since high school.
Yeah.
I don't do it as regularly as I used to, but I still jot things down. And upon my death, whenever that happens to be, hopefully it's years from now, my best friend's got, to look through my books first and get rid of my journals, so then the guilty or the innocent aren't upset after my passing about what I may or may not have said about them.
No, I totally get it. It's just a place for like just grabbing your thoughts,
Right.
it's really that of just like grabbing that stuff, and especially that section I was just reading about increased self-awareness, because I really started in college, and then really as a young adult really just become like it was a regular process for me. And I always like to describe it as this: when you're doing journaling, it's you're doing spiritual and emotional detective work on your stuff. Like you're just, and boy, talk about like seeing patterns that might come up for yourself in your life. Like I have found that too, where I found stuff that's been a couple of years old, and I take a look in certain patterns and I go, oh yeah, you weren't regularly praying, or you were doing drinking back then, or you were filled with envy about certain things, or you can identify the things that are going on. Actually, there's also times when I can identify gaps when I wasn't writing down in my journal. All of a sudden, I'd like open up a journal and go, oh, it's been months since I wrote in here, and going, yeah, I get it. Like that idea of like showing up, and, we don't recognize the benefit of something until we're away from it, not doing it. I just had that, elbow injury just a few weeks ago, and it knocked me out of my exercise stuff. Like it knocked me out of my exercise and my running and everything. All of a sudden I'm like grabbing candy and chips and, put on an extra 10 pounds all of a sudden, and just like kind of going, what are you doing? You know, and how easy it is for you to just fall out of a habit of something. And it's not until you can see the negative side effects of what's happening that you go, oh yeah, maybe that's a good habit to regularly have in my life, And I just feel like I have discovered that journaling is like that, you know.
Makes a big difference. I know for me, I did a lot of it when I was in counseling, and that was at the counselor's request. I didn't like it as much then, but man, did I learn so much about myself and the way I looked at the world
Mm.
from my past, with all those lenses that cover our eyes from our past. And it was shocking and eye-opening. And then once I knew about it, then I could start to see those patterns in my life and then be able to deflect or redirect when old patterns were in the way. Yeah. Journaling is a great tool.
You just said something that's really, really important. It is a tool to be able to start identifying those blind spots that you might have in your
Yes.
life, It's almost like writing these things down so that you can see them. And when you start seeing these patterns or things coming up and up again over and over again, you go, huh, that's familiar to me. Why do I keep writing it? What are the set of circumstances that keep coming up that this keeps happening for me? Um, and it really can't, believe me, man, there's stuff I've seen in my past journals with stuff that I've written that I just go, oh my gosh, who who is this guy? Who is this guy? Right. And in a way, it's not about like guilt or condemnation or anything like that. It's just recognizing it. It is literally capturing your thoughts, like it says in the New Testament, right? Like capturing
Yep.
those thoughts or capturing those things, taking any of those crazy thoughts that are going and just like wrangling them and going, nope, you come here. You come here. You're not in charge. I'm in charge. And it's not to negate feelings or emotions that come up, but to be able to identify them and go, hold on, emotions or crazy negative thoughts or spiraling anxiety. You're not in the driver's seat. God's in the driver's seat. And there's actually a part of me here that's connected with God that kind of says, hold on, let me take some ownership and responsibility of what's going on. It's a big thing that you learn in program, especially as you're writing through and doing your steps and doing those things. You start to really to identify. Yeah, a lot of times you can look at things like what you're talking about, where you can do a lot of the blame game. Well, it's because of this happened to me and this happened to me and this happened to me. But another side of it is to recognize, hey, what was your part in it?
Right.
Well, and it's to go, believe me, you had a part in it. Like, let's start taking a look and unpacking that, you know. Um, and again, it's stuff that we'll get into a little bit later, but which is the great theme of the month, right? But it's a good thing to capture that stuff too, because it can also help you when you're starting to look forward about what your dreams are or what the things are that you're striving for, so that you can also identify those things that want to continually pop up to knock you off course of the things that you're aspiring towards as well. So believe me, there's also fantastic things that happen with journaling, which we'll get into over the next several weeks, which is about, sort of dreaming and scheming and figuring out what it is what God's calling you to do, and to be able to capture and get those things very clear. So
Yep.
anyway, just wanted to share that. So if you want to join along with us, I'd rather be a buffalo.com /free journal. We got it right there. Get your free PDF today, or go over to Amazon, get one, or buy one for another friend and share with them so you can all journal together. We're not going to stop you. We're going to encourage you. Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, pal.
You bet.